Welcome to Surrender School. At Surrender School, we recover. Our mission is to share 12-step and other supportive recovery solutions with those who want a healthy relationship with food. We are not an official 12-step meeting, but we do try to adhere to the spirit of the traditions. If Surrender School has helped your recovery in any way, please consider donating. There's a yellow donate button at the bottom of the landing page for our website. We have Zoom costs, website hosting costs, insurance costs, and we will be having some retreat costs as we get that up and running. We should be getting started on that pretty soon. I'm kind of excited about it. Okay, let's take a moment to feel your breath going in and out. Maybe take a couple of deep breaths. Draw your attention back to the present and back to the room. Feel your feet on the floor. Ground yourself in the moment. And let's do this together. Higher power, help us to set aside everything we think we know to leave space for what we have yet to learn. Okay. So you have all heard of HALT, right? The hungry, angry, lonely, tired, kind of relapse problems or slip problems, right? Well, today I'm going to talk about TRAP, T-R-A-P, and this was an acronym coined by Michelle Seeger for addiction disruptors or abstinence disruptors, I'm calling them. T is for temptation. R is for rebellion. A is for accommodation. And P is for perfectionism. So let's take them one at a time. The definition of temptation is the desire to do something, especially something wrong or unwise. And to me, that sums it up pretty well. Temptation is our brain remembering how good it felt to get our effect. It's like remembering associations with tempting food or food situations. I think a lot of us have that kind of stuff around holidays because there's an awful lot of food associations with holidays. On page 19 of the big book, Bill says, in our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. Now, you've all heard me talk about setting yourself up for success and that food addicts are more susceptible to environmental food cues. We've talked about that. And all of that is true. That is absolutely true. We do what we can to keep the binge food out of our sight in our homes, but when you walk out your front door, you are bombarded with food cues. I mean, the restaurants, fast food places, convenience stores, all of our old binge haunts, right? Food is everywhere, but we don't have to rub our faces in it. That's important. I'm going to say that again. We don't have to rub our faces in it or unnecessarily tempt ourselves by going into these establishments unless, as the big book says, we have a legitimate reason for being there. So if, for example, if I am on vacation and you know those kitschy little towns where you go in and there's all these fun touristy shops and you go up and down and you go in the different touristy shops and inevitably there is either taffy, homemade candy, caramel apples, or fudge or ice cream. And do I need to go into those places? No, no, there is no conceivable reason for me to do that. Now, going into restaurants or going to a gathering or a picnic or a potluck or something like that, where they are kind of food-based, there are reasonable reasons for me to be there. And I just have to take steps to take care of myself in it. But we have to have common sense about all of this when it comes to temptation. We can't avoid all food situations. It's impossible unless you're a hermit in a cave on a mountain or something. But we don't have to surround ourselves with it if it is not necessary or it's avoidable. So we don't do things like go into our old binge haunts. It's just us having lunch by ourselves. Go into an old binge haunt and think we're going to order a salad. That's not very reasonable or common sense. But if we went into an old binge haunt, but it was a group gathering or maybe a work lunch or something like that, then we take care of ourselves around that. So you see the difference there in the temptation that I'm talking about? Okay. So the next disruptor, abstinence disruptor, is rebellion. The definition of rebellion is the action or process of resisting authority, control, or convention. We rebel against shoulds because they make us feel like our freedom has been taken away from us. The AA 12 and 12 on page 69 says, delay is dangerous and rebellion may be fatal. Some people do not have a rebellious nature, but I do. Having a feeling of being controlled or hemmed in is a huge trigger for me. I hate that feeling. And this is particularly true for a lot of folks with regard to food plans. Most, if not all people, don't have as much of a problem with actually, okay, this is my abstinence or alcoholic foods list. This is what my abstinence is going to be. But when you talk to them about the issue of weighing and measuring their food, or they just kind of go into instant rebellion. It feels like the diet. It feels like a pay and weigh. I get it. Weighing and measuring just feels like one more frickin' diet. And make sure you hear me. Hear me here. Not all people need to weigh and measure. And some of them even shouldn't weigh and measure. It depends on the person. If weighing and measuring triggers a binge or triggers you to restrict, then you shouldn't do it. Your food plan can be as simple as that 301 plan, right? With no alcoholic foods, the 3 meals a day, nothing in between, one day at a time. It can be something as simple as that. But if you're a volume eater and you want to lose weight, then you probably are going to have to weigh and measure at least for a certain amount of time. I got around my rebellion in this area by kind of trying to reframe it differently. And I began thinking of food as my medicine, and weighing and measuring was just to make sure that I got the right dosage of my medicine. So I thought of my food plan as my medicine. And that seemed to help. I mean, it's not perfect, but it helped me a little bit. It helped tamp down the rebellion a little bit. The other thing that's important with regard to rebellion, and I think you've heard me on my soapbox about this a few times so far this month, is taking 100% ownership of your abstinence. You make it your own. You make it your treasure. Then no one is making you do anything. If you own it 100%, it's yours. You made the decision to do what you're doing. No one is forcing you, no one's making you, no one's shaming you into do it. It's yours. I cooperate. The way I look at it is I cooperate with my higher power on my food plan. We're a team and we're in this together. It is my choice whether I try and work the program around it and use the tools and work with my higher power on remaining abstinent and following a food plan. It's my decision. We had that whole talk about making a decision. Okay. The next is accommodation. Now, the definition of accommodation is the process of adapting or adjusting to someone or something. Basically, it's when we make others' needs more important than our own. People pleasing, right? There's no big book quote for accommodation or necessarily for people pleasing, but that doesn't mean that it isn't a big problem for all of us. I don't think I've ever sponsored anyone in program that did not have issues with people pleasing in some way. So now I see people pleasing kind of as the opposite side of the same coin as rebellion. I think most food addicts have problems with it, and it's really deadly for our abstinence in a couple of different ways. So let me go through those because I think this is a very important abstinence disruptor for us. First, being a people pleaser means you are in a constant state of dishonesty. You are lying. You are not being true to yourself to just get along, to avoid conflict, to make people like you, to avoid abandonment, but you're being dishonest. When I am out of integrity with myself, food is required to get away from these bad feelings. Second, there is a price to pay for accommodating everyone else's needs over our own. It's called resentment, and we're all really, really familiar with that. And we all know that resentment is deadly for our abstinence. That the big book is very clear about. On page 64, Bill says, resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. And people pleasing is a perfect setup for resentment. Last but not least is the sneakiest way accommodation sabotages our abstinence, and that's through guilt. She made this just for you. I don't want to be a bother and put anybody out. I can't dictate what the hostess serves for dinner. I can't bring my own food to this event. I'll hurt their feelings. Okay. Then, after all this people pleasing is done, we are the lonely audience of one to the result of eating one of our alcoholic foods. We're binging our brains out and possibly going down the road to long-term relapse while the people we were so concerned about pleasing are completely unaware of what's happening and they've gone on their merry way. And we're the ones that suffer the consequences of it. The last abstinence disruptor we're going to talk about is perfectionism. Now, the definition of perfectionism that I like is, quote, the refusal to accept any standard short of perfection, close quote. It's the belief that you have to do it 100% right 100% of the time. And it's all about performance. Whole books have been written on the evils of perfectionism. Bill warns us on page 156 of the AA 12 and 12 that we are all perfectionists who, failing perfection, have gone to the other extreme and settled for the bottle and the blackout. When we apply perfectionism to our abstinence, we are almost always guaranteeing a relapse in our future. What happens if we slip up? What happens? By the measurement of perfectionism, we have failed. Capital letters, underlined, bolded, exclamation point. We have failed yet again. We are such losers. How could we be so stupid, so weak, so careless? No point in continuing after all, because we have failed. So, like the big book says, we fail for our alcoholic foods and the oblivion they bring. That's where perfectionism leads us. But if we don't look at abstinence and our food plan as a performance, something we're graded on, something we have to do perfectly or drown in shame, then all we have to do is course correct if something goes wrong, and we learn from it and we move on. And it doesn't have to be this complete shame spiral down into 3 fast food joints. Am I saying that routine exceptions to your abstinence are okay? No, that is not what I'm saying here. I'm not being loosey-goosey, and I know this feels like a paradox. Perfectionism and what's the word? Perfectionism and cavalierness, laissez-faire-ness, um, they neither one of those work. There has to be a happy medium in there that can work for us. So essentially, bottom line is what I am saying is don't let a slip be an excuse to quit program and lose your soul in the food yet again. All right. So trap, temptation, rebellion, accommodation, or people pleasing, and perfectionism. That's the new acronym to add to HALT. So let me show you our question for today. All right. Which one of these recovery disruptors, temptation, rebellion, accommodation, or perfectionism, is the worst for you and your abstinence? How does it show up? I'll see you on the other side. I'll set a timer for 5 minutes, and then we'll get back together.
Thanks for recovering with us.